Welcome, everybody, to another episode of Mr. Mikhail's Manor of Mischief, Magic, and Mystery, the podcast where we talk about music, the occult, and just day-to-day life. I am your host, Andrew Mikhail, and welcome to the 6M Podcast. And we're back. Welcome, everybody, to episode 38 of the podcast. Hope everybody's doing all right out there. Things are kind of kooky at the moment. And it seems like ever since 2020 started, every podcast, if you've been subscribed and if you've been listening to the podcast since day one, number one, thank you. But number two, it seems like every podcast has started out that way because things have not been okay since 2020 started, pretty much. And it doesn't seem like it's going to be slowing down anytime soon. And, you know, every podcast that I listen to, every program that I watch seems to be talking about the election. And for those of you that are subscribed, you may have wondered, well, where were you last week on election night or the next day or whatever? And it's not that I wanted to sit out last week's episode because honestly, I'm just taking everything in. It seems like there's a lot going on to the initiated mind, so to speak. And for those of you that have been listening, you know that I am an observer of sorts. I like to observe and commentate wherever I see fit. A lot of the times raising questions rather than spewing narratives. And I know a lot of people out there that are claiming to be unbiased or partisan or neutral or centrist, but yet they only further one dialogue, and it's blatantly obvious. And I just try and take everything as I see it and as I read it and absorb it. And I observe people's reactions. I observe the masses. I observe the ethos that we live in. And I tend to commentate either via social media or via music or lyrics or whatever. And that's my gig, and that's what it's always been, and that's what I've been doing for 10 plus years. And it's kind of a shocker to me that, you know, I've lost a substantial amount of followers by commentating. And keep in mind, I have not said, you know, I'm for this, I'm for that, fuck you if you don't believe, you know, I haven't done any of that. If anything, I'm experimenting. I'm experimenting on different avenues or testing to see where, you know, my message or the serpent's message actually resonates the most, aka the message of truth or occult knowledge or higher learning or philosophy. And, you know, it seems like it's more accepted on one side over the other. But again, I have not given up on everybody. I have not given up for 10 plus years, and I don't plan to give up on you all now. And I'm going to keep doing what I'm doing, which is, again, for those of you that don't get it yet, is observing and commentating. That's what I do. That's since Oceano, since whenever. Serpents US. That's what I've done. That's who I am. Since I was a kid, I was this way, and kind of makes me sad. You know, I will admit publicly that it does make me sad to see so many of you go just based on thinking that you understand where I'm coming from, or putting me in a box, or in the current environment of things, putting me on a list of sorts. That's a thing now. Kind of takes me back to the old days of real dictatorships and regimes. Remember, I am a Middle Eastern person, and just kind of seems like a different version of what's it called? Prejudice than I experienced firsthand post 9/11. So that's cool. But this episode is not about all of that. I just wanted to get that out of the way because, some of you might have, thought after that last episode that I, crawled into a hole. But I did state in that last episode that something had happened, and I had found out while recording that episode, and I tried to hold it together. I tried to finish the episode, with some sort of resolve that didn't make people think, what the hell just happened to him, halfway through that podcast. It was tough, but I did it. And I think I did it at least. And I took some time off, again, to absorb all of the negativity in the air. And as a self-appointed, I would guess you could call it a hyper, or some call it super empath, I do absorb all that negativity, and I try to mutate it or transmutate it. That's a term for our occultist friends out there, into gold. Transmutate this negative energy that's drowning us all in the air. And I try to transmutate it into gold for those who wish to have it. If you don't, I pity those who willingly choose ignorance over knowledge or alternate perception. And again, that's what Serpents is. That is my offering to the world of, here's the situation, this is how it could be, or this is how it could be on that side. You choose. That's what I do. It's my job. And been doing it for 10 years, and I seem to, I guess people like what I do. I don't know what to say, but I took a break from last week's podcast to collect myself because I had found out through Facebook's algorithm, when someone posts a picture on Facebook and you get a notification where it says, "Is this you?" And you look and it's a picture of you, the facial recognition, whatever algorithm. While recording that podcast, I'd gotten a notification from a person I've never seen before. And I was like, what is this? Did someone see me walking down the street or something? Because that's happened before. It's really weird to see a complete stranger post a picture of let's say like a concert or like a conference. And if you're walking around, next thing you know, you get a tag. It's like, was that you? It's like, Jesus, man. Chill out, Zuckerberg. Jesus. So I had gotten a notification from a person I've never seen or met before that said, this is you. And I said, okay, well, let's look. And it was a few pictures from my time in the band Defiler. And I was like, okay, what is this? Maybe is this like a Defiler appreciation post or something? And I read the caption, and I had found out that my friend and a previous bandmate, previous drummer, one of the most talented, I know everybody says this, everybody does say this when someone, you get where I'm heading with this. One of the most talented dudes that I know, and one of the most underrated and without praise musicians that I know. Craig Ledbetter has passed away in, I believe, his sleep. And I had found that out during that last episode. So it's been about 2 weeks now since it happened. Being that I found out via Facebook, I didn't want to talk about it. I didn't want to go public with anything and say anything because, to be honest with you, I wanted to talk to the band members that I had come to know. And granted, Defiler now is I believe, well, it's pretty much the same lineup from the first tour that I did with Defiler, with the exception of another guitar player. But the version that Craig was in, we had done some tours together. Some of the most prominent and memorable tours in my life, and also one of the most prominent and memorable experiences of my life. I had shared that with that version of Defiler that included Craig. And it's no, dog on any other version of the band that I had toured or played with. It's just, there's a lot of memories there and a lot of great experiences there that I could talk about a little bit more on this podcast. But I had found out that he passed away, and, I kind of wanted to just see where everyone was at, give everybody their space because, I don't know if you guys know this, but I'm in Illinois, in the Chicagoland area, and Defiler is based out of, California, like San Francisco, Bay Area, California. And when I had played with the band, I had to fly in and out every time we had to do anything, which at the time we had a lot to do, which was awesome at the time. I believe it was like 2014 era, this specific era with Craig. And I had a little bit of a divide from the band, being that I was in Illinois, and being that after all of the events that have played out, we all kind of went our separate ways. Jake and Craig, I think, and Joey went on to create Divination, and I went back to my hole with Serpents US, and we kind of coexisted and kind of went our own ways for about 6 years, with the exception of, touching base from time to time, getting messages from Craig, funny messages or inside jokes here and there. Again, I kind of felt alienated from the group because I was so far away, and anyone who knows the Defiler or clique group, whatever you want to call it, friend group, knows that they're very tight-knit and pretty much like a family. And that's including like all of the people that aren't even in the band. Everyone around them is like a family, which I was thankful in my time with the band or in the Bay Area. I was very thankful to have come to know and befriend a lot of them. And some, I guess, pulled away from me in the past. I mean, I really don't know what happened, or maybe I lost their interest with Serpents. I don't know. I don't really, that's their prerogative. Cool, I guess. But, I kind of wanted to see what was going to happen. If anyone was going to tell me. I kind of felt bitter about it, finding out via Facebook. And then I had saw that Jake had posted um, a status finally, or a tweet, whatever you want to call it, stating that, Craig had in fact passed away, and, hold tight for an announcement regarding Jake. And I mean, forgive me, guys, if this is boring to you. This is like kind of me journaling at this point. Sorry. But at that point, I was kind of like, well, what's going on? Because I had questions. I wanted to know what happened to my friend. And, I wasn't even concentrating on me to the point where I was like, well, why didn't anyone call me? Why didn't anyone tell me? I immediately kind of was like, everyone's hurting. I'm on the back burner of, focus. But at that time, I had just wished that, someone would have reached out as a brother, as a bandmate, and would have told me what happened. But it's okay, because shortly after, Jake posted a status from the Defiler page, I guess you could say, announcing Craig's passing, and also announcing that Jake himself has some medical issues. I believe he goes in depth on it via the Defiler band page. If you want to go check that out, listen to Jake's statement, donate to his, I guess you could call it, fundraising, I guess, GoFundMe. I don't know what it is. Donations for his medical, I guess, procedures or medical help. Basically, he's going through a lot of shit right now. And from what he tells me and also the world, he thinks he's not going to make it. He thinks he's dealing with something that could be fatal. And again, I kind of stood back, took that information in, because honestly, I really didn't know what to take from that, because, I really didn't know what has been happening for a long time now, because we had a small disagreement over that whole Trapped beef that they had with Trapped. And, jokes on the internet really go far, being that no one really knows your cadence or your sarcasm or your whatever tone via the internet, i.e. what's happening to me, I guess, for the past however many years I've been on the internet, hence the podcast. But, we lost touch a little bit over a small, I guess you could call it, misunderstanding on that whole thing. And I had last week, pretty much the time I was supposed to record the podcast on election, or I think it was a little bit after election day, because I was like, I'm going to do a podcast around Craig's passing, speak of some stories and whatnot. And then Jake was like, hey, I need you to contact me. I need you to talk to me for a minute about something. And he was like, I believe you've heard, right? About Craig. And I was like, yeah, I heard. Let's talk. So Jake and I talked and caught up for about 3 hours. And we caught up for in regards to his personal situation and the struggles he's gone through with the medical system, the struggles that Craig had gone through for pretty much the past 6 years in his life. the struggles everybody else is going through, which isn't my business to speak on. And, basically just catching me up to speed, and we ended up speaking about that stupid fucking misunderstanding with the whole trap thing, which was nice. And it kind of brought me back to those times in 2014, 13, whatever, when I was with Defiler, and it was just nice to talk to him and be there for him, even if he didn't think I was there for him. And also him being there for me, because, it really closed up a lot of open ends on my part in terms of, my concern, I guess you could call it, for everybody. I'm always worried. Even if nobody's worried about me, I'm always worrying about everybody. Hence that whole situation I talked about earlier in this episode. I'm always trying to care for other people, including people that I've never even met before. For some reason, I don't know why I do this, but I don't know. Maybe it's because I've had problems as a kid. I always wanted someone to be there for me. Maybe I always wanted someone to guide me, give me some sort of fucking advice. Which still to this day, it's hard to come by. But I try and put out into the world what I wish, 9-year-old to whatever-year-old me could receive. And talking to him was really, really opened up a lot of good memories and also some old wounds in terms of our history and how everything panned out, which I think, don't quote me on it, but I think Jake will be speaking on some of that soon, on some of the behind the scenes happenings of that era of Defiler. But I just wanted to, talk about how I came to know Craig and honor his memory, if that's okay with you guys. So I had flown into, well, let me backtrack. So at that time, I think it was 2013, 2014, I had been with Defiler. We did Russia, we did Ukraine, Belarus, month-long tour, an extensive tour in Russia with that lineup. It was awesome, great tour, a lot of promise in the air. And I don't remember what happened, but Craig, being one of the older drummers of Defiler, I think, maybe, I don't know. Craig has always been around in Jake's life, from what I understand. They're old friends. I don't know if they're childhood friends, maybe. But from what I understand, Craig was always that kid that was like really talented and didn't really have an outlet for it. So I think he ended up playing with Defiler or playing on a Defiler record or on a song. I don't know. Or helped write. I don't know. I'm trying not to speak out of turn. So, but from what I understood, our drummer at the time, Ian, I love you, Ian. Hope you're doing okay. I guess switched out positions with Craig before we were working on some new stuff, which Jake pretty much did most of it. And with the working on new stuff came shopping around to labels, studios, whatever. And Jake, being who Jake is, shoots for the stars, as always. As of right now, literally right now, he's trying to get interviewed on the Joe Rogan Experience. I mean, dude shoots for the stars. He literally, we call him the golden child for a reason. I mean, you can't tell him anything. So, he shoots for the stars, and then we get an offer to do Soundwave, which is a massive, massive festival in Australia, or at least it was before they stopped doing it a couple of years ago. But we got an offer to do Soundwave in Australia, and we had this new material demoed out, and Jake had told us that I don't know how this transpired. I don't remember, but Craig would be stepping in on drums at least for the tour, maybe in permanency. I don't know. And immediately I was hesitant. I remember I was hesitant because I was like, well, I've came to know the band that was, and I was like, being that we had these big things in the works, I was scared. I was like, I don't know if switching this chemistry up is a good idea or not. But I was open-minded because at that time I was just a hired gun, and being that we were working on stuff together, I was trying to be more involved in things, I guess you could call it. But I was more of like a advisor, so to speak, where Jake, being it was his baby since however long, I've quickly found out that, this is his baby, and Serpents is my baby, and I'll concentrate on the inner workings and all that for Serpents, and let Jake do his thing because, hey, it got us to Russia, it got us on Soundwave, and at the time we were working with Audio Hammer Studios on these demos, or at least Jake was. And, Jake hits me with okay, we're going to have a new drummer. He's an old drummer and a good friend. You're going to love him. And we're going to do a video. As soon as you come to California, we're going to rehearse. We're going to rehearse the new songs too. And we're going to hang out. And we're going to go straight to Soundwave for 2 or so weeks. And those of you who are already familiar with Soundwave know that it's only like 7 shows, but we were down there for 2 weeks. And I'll talk about that later. So I head on the plane, and I talked to Craig back and forth online, and I was like, hesitant because like this guy really isn't saying much. He's nice. He's not saying much. I don't know what's happening. Like I said, the California family is really tight. So me coming in there, and let's say we didn't get along, I was kind of nervous. I'm like, I don't know, maybe I'll be the odd man out. But to my surprise, flew in, and immediately upon flying in that day, I meet Craig, and typical Jake fashion, we go straight into recording the video for the Lazarus sign, which, if you remember, is a party video pretty much. I mean, Jake did all the B-roll stuff in advance, and I flew in, and in that hour, I flew in, went to the, I forgot what they call it, the den, I don't remember, the shack, that's what it's called, the shack, and we recorded the video for the Lazarus sign, and at that same time, I was getting to know Craig pretty much in person, getting a vibe for him, seeing if I like him, a lot of girls, a lot of alcohol. So I'm like, hey, if there's any place to get to know somebody that you're going to be touring with, it's this. And needless to say, I was pleasantly surprised with how humble Craig was, how nice he was to me, how self-conscious he was. And, I just knew, I was like, this guy, I like him. He needs a little work. He needs a little shaping to get into the machine, so to speak, the industry. And I went to bed happy that night. Granted, I threw up all over the place. Sorry to Joey's father. It was the first night in a long time that I'd thrown up from drinking whiskey, but I had a burrito like right before I fell asleep. So that's what happens when you fly and then arrive on an empty stomach and then don't have money for food. So you go for a burrito. But, go to sleep happy that night knowing, all right, today was a good day. And right after, we had rehearsals, like I believe the following days. And we ended up recording the video for Hollow Bastion. Again, Jake recorded all the B-roll footage. So we did the performance footage and we got to rehearse a little bit. And oddly enough, I had gotten to know Craig in the middle of shooting, based on, Jake walking away to go handle whatever chaos was going on with the potential deal we were working with, or Soundwave crisis, whatever. And, I'd gotten to chill with Craig and walk, to the store with Craig. And, I was like, this guy's a good guy. I like him. So we shoot the video, and fun fact for anyone who watches the video for the Lazarus Sign and Hollow Bastion, at the end, when you see Craig fall over the drum kit, because at the end of the video, all of us appear to be poisoned, maybe by Jake, who knows, one by one, and you see Craig kind of holding his arm. Yeah, that was Craig falling over the drum set and actually hurting himself. And I believe, my memory is fogged, but I believe he dislocated his shoulder or something of the sort on that shot. So that's actual real pain at the end of that video for those of you that have watched it. Fun fact for you all. But, after that, we go rehearse, party, get into Jake's normal shenanigans. He's a wild card, that kid. I'll tell you that right now. He's always been a wild card, and he still is. So, all the love to him, of course. So, we end up going to Australia. One of the biggest tours I've ever been on. I believe the headliner, oddly enough, was Green Day. Pretty much every band that you could think of is pretty much on this tour. It was actually one of the last tours Dave Brockie from Gwar ended up doing, which was fun and absolutely hilarious watching him and his shenanigans backstage. We spent 2 weeks pretty much living in hotel to hotel, flying from gig to gig. And I believe, I don't remember exactly, but I believe Craig and I shared a few hotel rooms, and then Jake and I shared a few hotel rooms. But usually the times I would share the hotel rooms with Craig, he would be talking to me about, the performances previous, nervous, most of the time, self-conscious, wanted to do his best, wanted to look his best, wanted to, you know, rub shoulders with the giants and not seem quote unquote lame. You know, he was that kind of guy. And I loved him for that because, again, he's one of the most talented people I had come to know because the guy could pick up an instrument and write something like amazing. And I'm not talking about like, oh, the guy's a shredder. He's technical on everything. He's theoretically, you know, a master at everything. But he just had a lot of soul. And he put that in the drums, even though, you know, the drums were written, you know, he would add some flavor. He would add some soul to it. Same thing with guitar. He'd pick up a guitar and write something very emotional, very cool. And even some leads that are on the Defiler albums, I believe. I don't remember. But we spent a lot of time in hotel rooms and in vans, shuttles, airports. And he was always the same guy and an amazing performer. Hilarious to be around. You know, we busted each other's balls a lot. And for anyone that has like toured with me, I think a lot of the people that say that I'm hard to deal with are the people that don't understand my humor, which is straight, you know, Chicago humor, old Chicago humor. You bust your balls a little bit. And Craig, he hung with me, you know. He didn't let anything get to him. He would bust my balls, we bust each other's balls, and that was a rarity at that time because, you know, it's like I said, being from Chicago, you're kind of different. You have a kind of different mindset. And anyone who knows me personally, including Jake and the crew, knows that I really didn't have a good time in California. I really didn't mesh well with the folks in Northern California. And Craig was always there to bounce, I guess, any grievances, any gossip, any, you know, girl problems, anything. We would bounce ideas, whatever, off of each other. And he honestly made my experience in that band better than it ever was. And that's not dogging on the old guys either. It's just, I felt like I found a kindred spirit in the band. Someone who contributes a lot, but also at the same time takes on the advisor role in the group. And I found solace in that at the time, you know. It was always very helpful to remember that another person was kind of going through that same, I guess, thing, if you want to call it a thing. And we had a lot of good times on that tour, partied a lot, seen a lot of crazy things. And we ended up coming back to California, I believe, for about a week or so. And we were headed to Japan next. So we just played Australia on some of the biggest stages in the country. And then we're riding that high wave and we're like, yeah, we got this shit. And then Lazarus signed Hollow Bastion came out and people were, I think at the time, mixed reviews, but the general consensus was that people liked the direction we were going in. We had significant interest from a prominent label at the time. And we were like, and we're going to Japan next? Hell yeah. So we rehearsed for about a week or so. and then geared up to go to Japan. And in typical Defiler fashion, not to dog on the band or anything, but anyone who knows. We head to the airport, and we didn't take into consideration, saying goodbye to everybody and traffic and whatever, picking up everybody. Because again, I was just an advisor. So we end up getting to the airport late. We missed our flight. We missed our flight to Japan, and I believe we were scheduled to arrive about a day early before the tour started, because we were working on the tour with Aggressive Dogs, aka Uzi One, from Japan, which if you're a hardcore fan, is a legendary punk and hardcore band from Japan that sadly I don't understand why never really quote unquote broke in the States, but they are legends in the scene in Japan. So being that they are legends in the country, they know how to plan a tour because they booked the tour for us. They handled everything pretty much, and basically knew what they were doing with touring in Japan, because Japan as a country is not that big and there's not that much area to cover with the tour. So they've done the circuit, so to speak, numerous times, and they had in consideration a day or so to get situated and whatnot before show one. And we ended up being late, missing the flight, and we thought the tour was canceled because I believe they said that we couldn't rebook our flights. I don't remember. But during that whole time, I'm furious. The rest of the guys are like trying to figure out what's going on. Jake's on the phone. Craig's looking on, online for like articles and like how to switch your flight and whatnot. And I remember all of us going home that day with our tails between our legs, and Craig was sitting there, messaging me left and right, like all these articles. And he's like, I think we can do it. Me being me, I'm like, man, if we fucking came all the way out here, I came all the way out here, I'm not going to do this legendary tour. I was really bummed because Japan was always on my bucket list of places to tour. And the guys in Aggressive Dogs figured it out for us, and we ended up going. And of course, Craig makes friends with everybody at the airport. So that was a fun flight. And being that they are more punk and hardcore, metalcore oriented, it was a little bit of a rough tour for us based off of the high we were coming from with Soundwave and being spoiled. We learned really fast. Well, I've been through it, but again, I was not expecting the DIY route in doing a Japanese tour. But it really put all of us to the test, and a lot of us were broke, hungry, really frustrated with the language barrier at times, the long drives, pretty much all over the countryside. And from day one, I think we had like a 18 or 20 something hours of travel just to get to show one. And when none of us could sleep, we were all hungry, thinking we were going to get food, drinks, anything. And it was really a testament to how tight we've become. And like I said, if you watch, there's a Defiler vlog on the Japan tour if you want to really experience all the different sides of it. I believe that the vlog kind of has like a darker vibe to it than the Russian tour, because we really struggled on that tour, and the only solace that we had were obviously the shows, even though they weren't, as big as playing in Sydney Olympic Park. But we had the solace of each other as well. And again, being that Jake was the leader, a lot of us would kind of be left to our own devices and, kind of congregate in our misery or our frustrations or our explorations, because Jake has a really specific diet that none of us could really attend to. So Craig, Joey, or I, or whatever, we would always go and kind of venture out and get like some food or whatever, if we could afford it, that is, or go to 7-Eleven, or I forgot what they call it over there, and grab some, gas station sushi or whatever for $1, some green tea. And I would gladly go on record and say that Craig was the one to save that tour in my memory, because through those dark times, I really got to know Craig. And I'm not saying it was the darkest time. I'm just saying it was a bit of a struggle. A lot of hungry nights, a lot of late nights, partying and whatnot, driving, whatever have you. And his sense of humor was the single thing that got me through it. And I had basically fallen in love with the idea of having him in the band, having a future together in the band, and going forward with some of the negotiations at the time with him in the band. Because honestly, there was I feel like there was a triumvirate, or I don't know if you would call it a triumvirate, but a triangle. And again, not to dismiss or dog on any previous members or other members of the band or of the crew, I'm just saying that there was always a weird power balance or weird dynamic between Jake, Craig, and I, where we kind of all balanced each other out. Even with any disagreements or even overwhelmingly funny or happy times, there was always a balance between all us three. And I'm who knows? I might be attributing too much to myself. I mean, I don't really know. I'm just speaking on my perspective from my account. So forgiveness to anyone listening that is involved or whatever might feel otherwise. I don't know. Can you tell I'm self-conscious about how not in the group or in the friend group I was? I don't know, man. I'm just trying to spew off some tales, but it's even things that would happen to one or the other, we would kind of take them as inside jokes. Like, perfect example, Craig and I were wandering about the streets of Sydney. I think at the time there was this game in the US, and it started to become a worldwide phenomenon where people would randomly sucker punch unsuspecting people in the head and record it for YouTube. And that was a thing back then. And I think now, if you ask Rick Moranis, but yeah, that was a thing. And they had a curfew in Sydney. And I remember Craig and I wandering about, and we were asking people for directions to get back to the hotel because I think it was like getting close to curfew. And, it's close to a lockdown status. Weird how that turns out. By the way, it sucks. But, yeah, Craig and I were wandering about trying to ask people directions, and everyone was ignoring us because we were obviously American, you know. And I remember Craig and I being like, oh, fuck. Like, cool. Thanks, you know. And I remember there was this taxi driver who was driving by, and we were like, excuse me. I think we were trying to get a taxi. I'm like, excuse me, can you take us to, and I just remember the guy is a Middle Eastern guy. He just goes, bye, and then drove off. So that bye turned into like a band inside joke for years. And Craig and I would send each other messages like, you know, videos of literally videos just of us sending each other bye. It's the stupid shit. It's literally the stupidest shit to normal people, but to us, it was fucking gold. And, you know, it happened to Craig and I, and, you know, it became a band inside joke, and things that happened to Jake and Craig, or Jake and Joey, or Joey and Craig, it became, you know, it was always like a group thing. And I really, really enjoyed that about being in Defiler. So we had inked a deal at the time with a major label. And with that came a projected 2 months in the studio. I am not at liberty to speak on the details of this phenomenon, but who knows? Maybe someone would speak on this one day. Maybe one day soon. I don't know. There's only a couple people that were part of this experience, myself being one of them. But long story short, I flew back to California after some time off, after licking my wounds from the Japan tour. Financial wounds, not, you know, morale. If anything, we were all more ecstatic and jazzed up than we've ever been about the band. And we were all very excited as to what was happening. So I had flown over to California to prepare for this 2-month endeavor in the studio. And upon my arrival, again, pure Jake fashion, we get straight to business, straight to rehearsing. We inked the deal, sent that out, got it notarized, whatever, vice versa, in order. I remember inking the deal with Jake and Craig, and I'll never forget. You know, Craig was always like the guy that was like, I'll take your picture, you know? Like, he didn't want to be in it for most of the time for some reason. I just think he was just shy. And he would ask me in return, like that was his way of getting me to take his picture. So he'd be like, oh, I'll take your picture. You want to take mine? And I'll be like, yeah, okay, sweet. I'll take your picture for you. I don't know. That was, again, that's could just be me. Might have not done that to anybody else. I don't know. Feel free to comment if I'm wrong. I don't know. So I say, Craig, take my picture while I sign the deal. I'm going to, post this or whatever. And I did. I posted it that day, but it was really secret. So those of you that might have seen it at the time, that's what I'm talking about. Then Craig, shyly asked me, can you, and I remember him being like, can you take a picture of me doing it too? And I'm like, yeah, dude. So I took some pictures and, that was a very big moment in his life. And I'm honored to have documented it. And again, to anyone who's listening to this might think, okay, what's the significance? I wouldn't be able to tell you, but I would tell you that when I signed my first major record deal, contract, whatever you want to call it, it was a huge moment in my life. It was a milestone, a lifetime goal, whatever you want to call it. And I wish there was documentation of it, because it really was like a piece of my history. And I had taken photos after signing my first record deal. So that's different, I guess you could call it. But it wasn't special enough to where I had pictures of me signing the actual record deal. So one of the biggest regrets I had, signed another deal later on, and then this was my third, I guess, record contract, and it was the biggest. So I was like, Craig, you take this picture. So and then he was like, could you take mine? And I have that forever. You know, I have that moment in Craig's life forever. And also some pictures from the hang afterwards. Of course, being Defiler and being in Jake's wings. We have to go party. We got to go out and about. We got to go sightseeing and breaking into abandoned things and abandoned lots and woods and tunnels and whatever. Allegedly, right? Allegedly. This is all fiction for the sake of saying it's fiction. But yeah, we would do that, and you know, we felt like we had the whole world ahead of us. And we had to go to the studio shortly after. And we actually drove from San Francisco area all the way down to like Orlando area, Florida. So literally like the left of the country to the right. So the Northwest, wow, it's late. The Northwest to Southeast. We drove just so we could have a car whilst in the studio for 2 months. And so we can get Jake some Chipotle and McDonald's. And that alone was a pretty interesting drive. Again, we kept each other entertained the best we could without wanting to kill each other while being in the car for that long. And trying to sway Jake from, stopping here and there. And it took about 20-something hours to get down to Florida. And I think it was Craig's first time in Florida. Might have been Jake's too, I don't know. We remember we got out of the van late at night, or what was it? The SUV? I think we took Jake's SUV. And we took a picture in front of the Florida sign with all of the hopes in our hearts, because we knew we were heading down there to make history, and we were going to make history together. Being that what was on the line was truly going to be groundbreaking. And again, I can't really speak on these things in depth, but it was going to be groundbreaking, and it was going to be an experience. And yeah, I'm glad I got that picture. I think that was the last time we actually traveled together, was from San Francisco area, or Bay Area, I guess you would call it, to Orlando. And we ended up in the studio, and immediately upon arrival in the studio, Craig and I were directed to go to the hotel while Jake and the producer hashed out some ideas and whatnot. I'm really trying not to dive too much into this, but Craig and I spent a lot of time in the hotel. A lot of time, being, what would you call it? Passive aggressive about, being in the hotel. And granted, we would go into the studio, but we wanted to like live in the studio and be in that control room the whole time and dive in deep and harass each other and harass Jake and, whatever. So in the first couple of weeks, while either Craig and Jake would go to the studio, or Jake and I would go to the studio, or just Jake go to the studio, or whatever, there was a lot of time in the hotel, and there's a picture of Craig and I in the pool where I look miserable because him and I would walk to the gas station or to whatever grocery stores was nearest, grab some I think at the time I was living off of frozen salmon and whatever pre-made quinoa. Basically, I was living $9 meals or whatever, as healthiest as I could get it and as most filling as I could get it. And there's a picture of me in the pool looking absolutely miserable while Craig was just on his phone trying to figure out what was going on all the time, and chain smoking cigarettes, even though he would tell you he wasn't. And, we play some pranks on each other. I remember, because Craig was religious, to my knowledge. So I'd always kind of dog on him for that and kind of bust his balls for that because, Andrewcifer, Not saying that I'm, this way or that way. I'm just saying that he was so innocent at the time that you kind of had to break him in a little bit. So anytime you'd be talking about this girl or whatever, I would just kind of bust his balls, be like, what does Jesus say? Stuff like that. And, I remember one time we went out, or Craig went out, and then I covered his whole bed with Jesus pamphlets from the lobby of the hotel. And literally his whole bed was Jesus pamphlets. And I remember putting porn on the TV. I remember him coming into the room. And I don't even remember his response. I don't even think he responded. I think he was literally just came in and was like, fucking bye. Which again, for those of you that don't even know us or don't even know what I'm talking about, you're like, I don't get it. It was just funny. We would play, I think, Nintendo 64. I think he brought a Nintendo in the hotel. We ended up leaving the hotel finally. We got more involved, started living in the studio. And again, Craig and I, or myself, or Craig and Jake, a lot of the time we're fending for ourselves in the studio and trying to kill some time. Played a lot of video games together, watched a lot of movies together, made a lot of weird sounds together. Created a record together. Well, at least the foundation of a record together. And through that period, again, it was not a pleasant experience, to say the least, to say the absolute least. And that was in no part or responsibility towards us as people, as a band. But we made the best of it. Whether if it was going to Chipotle together and blowing off steam together and gossiping about the record, opportunities arising, goals, whatever. We basically felt like we had nothing but greatness literally in our hands and in front of us. And it didn't pan out that way. Again, due to no fault of our own. And it became a toxic environment. And all the jokes, all the little trips, all the whatever that made it pleasant started to turn into, not very pleasant. Almost kind of like, I guess you could say that it felt like the experience was poisoned in a way. And everything that we omitted upon each other started to become poisonous and contempt. And again, it was no fault of our own. We were trying to make the absolute best situation of what we were handed. And we honestly thought that it was a part of the experience because, every great nu metal record, every great whatever record comes from some sort of weird pain. Some of our favorite records that we were shooting to be like or have the same level. We tried to take the same methods as some of our favorite artists that we all read about in like high school and whatnot, and apply that as much as we were allowed to apply it in our situation. And being that we weren't even allowed to apply that, plus just overall the toxicity of the situation, we not only did not get the experience we were looking for, but we were also just miserable. And like I said, eventually our humor, our camaraderie, our work started to suffer. And my time in the studio ended as my parts or my work was done. I thought I had another month to go. Unfortunately, I finished my work, and the powers that be had sent me home for the sake of whatever. I'm sure if anybody wants to talk about this, they will. But Craig was sad to see me go. Jake was sad to see me go, I think. I was sad to go. I did not want to go. But I remember Craig also telling me, he wanted to go home too. He was a part of the experience, but also at the same time limited to what he could do in the experience, as was I. But being that Craig also was very close with Jake, and they're both from California, and we all drove down together. Craig stuck it out with Jake for the remainder of that period, which I commend Craig for. And I'm pretty sure Jake appreciated that as well. I mean, I'm speaking out of line, but if Jake was alone in that situation, I'm sure he would have not been happy about it. And Craig wanted to be at Jake's side. And if you're listening to this, and if you didn't know this, would like to tell you that Craig genuinely wanted to be at your side during that experience, not only for the sake of the art, but also for your mental well-being, even to his own detriment. I'm sure that's not breaking news to you, but something he told me. And upon my arrival at home, I felt like the weight of the world was lifted off my shoulders. We could finally be the band we want to be. I did what I could, and the rest was going to be, hashed out in the studio with or without me. And I was totally okay with that because, again, remember what I said earlier. My role was just to help advise. This is, it was Jake's baby. It was Jake's music. I just helped where I could, if I could, and trusted him to do what he does best. And Craig thought the same. Literally the same. Hence why I kept talking about the triangle. And again, it's not to say that our bass player or, previous drummer or whoever, the crew, it's not to say that their role was minimalized, but there was a power dynamic where we all, balanced each other out, like I talked about. So little did I know that was the last time I would see Craig. It's heartbreaking to think about. I've thought about this for the past 2 weeks. It really took me a long time to try and figure out what to say in this podcast because I want to honor him and honor our friendship, our brotherhood, without telling every little, story, nitty gritty detail, whatever. I mean, we had so many good moments, so many good times, so many memories that it's all a blur at this point. And even while Jake at the moment is fighting for his life, it's the same thing. We had a lot of good moments, so many that it's all pretty much a blur. And I would be devastated if that was the last time I saw, all of them, because the situation turned a beautiful thing into a really ugly thing. And you could really tell it took a toll on all of us. And just to wrap this up or make this long story short, sorry, every time I start clicking, I gotta drink water. It's a little trick. That was the last time I had saw them. Things happened. as the powers that be will have it, and enter the period where we go our separate ways. I remember trying to get my gear back, and Jake being busy with trying to recreate, revision, rebrand the band, the music, the everything. I remember trying to get my gear back desperately from California. And despite my psychosis and anger at the time towards the fact that I was trying to get my belongings back, and I was trying to get reimbursed for the money I had spent, reimbursed by the label or the band, the entity, whatever you want to call it. I was very angry, very bitter, and I didn't say things that, people say, I regret that. I just wanted to be done. I wanted to be let go. I wanted to be set free, because I always felt like I wasn't really in the clique or in the group, like I spoke about before, even though, I thought it was a beautiful thing that they had there in California. Well, that group, I'm saying. And Craig, honestly, as much as I could tell that it hurt him to be put in the middle, because like I said before, I could always count on him to at least talk to me or bounce ideas off, or at least vent, because he would vent too, and we would bounce ideas off, whatever. Craig worked with me, got me my gear back, thankfully. And again, it's not to say Jake didn't want to bring my gear back or whatever. He was busy trying to stay afloat, and I was busy trying to restart Serpents and whatnot. Because keep in mind, during that whole process of recording and whatnot, we weren't gigging, we weren't touring, we weren't making money, we weren't working. So it really was a desperate time, and I needed every penny I could. I needed my gear just in case we can gig. And we held that, just for clarity's sake, we held that position in limbo for at least another, let me count here, 5 months? 5 months until a decision was made. And then, as per the decision, we had split or went our separate ways from each other. So at that point, after 5 months or whatever, I just wanted my stuff, and I genuinely did not expect to receive my belongings at that point, because I've been in a few bands, and most of the time, a lot of shitty things tend to happen, and that nothing of the sort happened with that. I don't know if it's thanks to Craig. I'm sure it was thanks to Craig and Jake, but I really do appreciate the kindness that they not only bestowed to me in welcoming me into the fold, but also letting me exit graciously and with some sort of respect and goodwill, which is a testament to both Craig and Jake. And since then, I would briefly communicate with Craig here and there. He would tell me some things about what's going on. But again, after leaving the fold, they became very busy with recreating the band together and with some other members, which at the time I distanced myself from because I felt not hurt, but bummed that, I didn't get a call to be a part of it, which in hindsight was good because I had fully pursued Serpents, and then I also pursued a relationship in the interim, which ended. And then upon that breakup, I had moved to Michigan because during that period of time we came from the studio, I had written the music for Temet Nose. And then once the music was finished, oddly enough, I had that breakup with said person, and I immediately, everything fell into place. It was like a sign. And I was like, I'm going to go method write for however long I need to do. And the only place I could afford and the only place I wanted to move to, because I loved the city, was Grand Rapids. So I had moved to Grand Rapids, then moved back briefly to Illinois, then moved to Texas to finish the album. Once I was finished method writing for 2 years, moved to Texas to finish the album, and then I had met the Lizard, and then I moved back to Illinois to be fully involved with the Serpents guys, because in that period between Michigan and Texas, I had finally convinced Miles and John to join me in Serpents, and we started jamming, and then I left everybody to go to Texas, follow my dreams. Wanted to live in Texas, so I moved to Texas, and then moved back to Illinois to be fully involved with Serpents and to pursue a relationship with the Lizard, and also try to attempt at like 29 or 30 at the time, I don't remember, try to attempt to have a home life aside from band life, and also a relationship life. And none of that would have been possible if, they would have called me for, I think at the time it was Divination. And then they went back to Defiler for, I don't know, however many. It was Divination for a few years, and they came back as Defiler, fully rejuvenated, new songs and whatnot. They still are obviously active, as Jake, I believe, is working on some new stuff at the moment. Even as he says on his deathbed, I don't think he's going to die. I'm pulling for him. I'm wishing him the best. But I'll tell you what, guys, the guy is still working on music, even while he's battling this condition that he has had bestowed unto him. Which, if anybody gets to hear this new Defiler stuff, I mean, I haven't heard it, but just remember that the guy is fighting through this essentially disease or whatever. I don't know what you would call it, just to bring you new music, even if it's the last thing he does. And I think that's, I mean, What more do you want out of your favorite artists? You tell me. People start a band on YouTube. They get or Spotify. They play their first show, and if there's not more than an X amount of people, they'll break up. Then you have lifers like Jake and myself that will literally kill ourselves just to bring you art. Just to bring you something where another person could say, oh, the snare. I don't like the sound of the snare. The song is ruined. Oh, I don't like that he's singing. The song is ruined. It's like, dude, what more do you want? Especially in times like this, like the pandemic time, whatever you want to call it. We're all hanging by a fucking thread. Everything you see online where everybody's sitting there patting themselves on the back, whatever, it's all a facade. This whole industry is smoke and mirrors. And mostly everybody's hurting. Sorry to break it to everybody, and if they're not hurting, well, I don't know what to tell you. The lifers are hurting right now. And it makes me think of Craig and obviously Jake. But it makes me think of Craig because in that time, he became a drummer for, I think, a worship band, and he got to play some shows. And we would kind of bust each other's balls about that a little bit. We would message each other advice, like health tips, whatever. He was the guy that got me onto Kratom, actually. I was actually taking Kratom right before the pandemic hit, and then that stopped. But, I respected Craig, and I respected his opinion, and I respected him as a musician and as a friend. And it really makes me sad to see that the world has lost him and that he never got to the point where he wanted. And it makes me think about all of us that are fighting to the death, essentially, like even Jake or myself. I'm self-destructing everything around me just to bear it all for the sake of everyone else except for me. Because that would be off-brand if I didn't practice what I preached. So I'm really sticking to my guns and practicing what I preach. And people like myself or Jake, we put it all on the line every day. And a lot of times, we don't get the results that we want, but it's not about the results. It's about the act. It's about the act of putting out said art, the message, the whatever. So I just wanted to talk about the chronicles of Craig and my life without divulging too much information. And again, apologies that this episode came out a little bit later than anticipated, but it really took some time to evaluate what I could not talk about, evaluate my own feelings, evaluate the climate in the world or in the industry so that Craig could at least get his due, at least from my doing. This is the best I could do at the moment, and I wanted to do it in a time where it wasn't as crazy, like the election, and that would have obviously overshadowed this podcast episode and quite possibly the memory or memorial, or I don't know what you would call it. So I hope that you forgive my tardiness for this episode, but I'm fighting through a lot of things, and Jake's fighting through a lot of things. And if you want to support him, head over to the Defiler page. I believe he's got his donations set up there. A lot of people helping him out right now. So if you feel like lending a hand, especially if you're waiting for some new Defiler stuff, feel free to give him a hand. And yeah, so on that note, I'm just going to say thank you for listening this far. If you've listened this far, if you've enjoyed this episode of the podcast or any episodes of the podcast before it, if you haven't listened, do me a favor and go listen, okay? Please subscribe to the show, rate the podcast, comment on the podcast wherever applicable. And if you haven't already, join our Facebook group while Facebook is still a thing. You can find us at Mr. Mikhail's Manor of Mischief, Magic, and Mystery, the podcast, aka facebook.com/groups/the 6M podcast. That's THESIXM podcast. And since this show does not have any sponsors as of yet, I would like to urge you all, if you want to support what we do here at the Manor, support Serpents US simply by following us on Spotify at Serpents US. Listen to our music, throw us on some of your favorite daily go-to playlists if you can. Literally every play, every follow, every listen, whatever helps beyond measure, especially while social media at the moment is taking a lot of flack, and I don't know what the future holds for all of that. So if you could follow us on Spotify, and at the time of this recording, we really need your support on YouTube. Again, I don't know what's going to happen to YouTube with all that's going on, but follow us on YouTube or subscribe to our YouTube channel at We Are Serpents. So you can find us at youtube.com/user/We Are Serpents. I'm putting out live streams, vlogs, track by track videos, Q&As, and hopefully some new music or some behind the scenes stuff. We're working on some stuff slowly but surely. But honestly, we're really feeling out the landscape to see if the world is ready, if we're ready, and if there's even going to be a music industry in the near future. So that's a thing. And we're doing what we can with what we can. And all of it is through your support. So again, thank you for listening to me ramble a bit about my friendship and partnership with Craig Ledbetter. I missed you before, and now I'm going to miss you forever now. I did not think I would be saying that, but such is life, and I wish you all the best. I'm sending all of the positive and high vibrations to Jake for a speedy recovery and for a successful release to be. But yeah. All right, guys. Thank you for listening. Stay safe and stay sane.